Thank you, Dr. Royer. And we have David Royer here with the University of Louisville, and he is going to be our presenter today. So I'm going to turn that over to you, Dr. Royer, and let you get started. And thanks to each of you who have joined with us today. So I'll turn it to you.
Great. Thank you so much. I love to share any information that I can from either the research that I do or that there's a research team that I'm a part of, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that. So thank you for the opportunity to be here to share some information. And we discussed a couple different topics and came up with a general overview of just entry level kind of creating a positive, productive, safe learning environment. And I'll delve into some components of what that is, some of the core components, foundational components to positive behavioral interventions and supports and things like that. But real fast, my name is David Royer, and I'm at the University of Louisville in the Department of Special Education, Early Childhood and Prevention Science, very long department name, and the College of Education and Human Development. This is my fourth year here, and before that, I was 4 years at the University of Hawaii, before that, University of Kansas, and before that, I was a high school teacher for 8 years in the resource program in California. So I really enjoyed the teaching and working with all of my students, and I wanted to learn more about this behavior thing because in my school, our principal would ask us every year, what do you guys need for professional development? What do you need? What do you need? And every year, all the faculty said, classroom management. We need help with classroom management. I was teaching in Long Beach, and the border of Long Beach and Compton split our campus in half. So we had a really tough group of students, we would describe them as, behaviorally, and we didn't know anything about prevention. That's the word we should have been using. Like, give us some professional development. How do we prevent challenging behaviors? How do we understand them? How do we know what the motivation behind them is, the why, the function, anything like that. And if only we had known the right questions to ask, we might have gotten more help instead of continuously asking for just classroom management, where they would come and tell us the best way to arrange our rooms based on the instructional modality for that day, which is good information, and managing paperwork and all those things were great, but it wasn't what we needed for behavior. So I wish I knew then some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. So specifically, we'll look at the research model that I investigate, which is going to be the FRAME, Comprehensive Integrated Three-Tiered Models of Prevention, which is almost identical to Kentucky MTSS. It's got the same core components of academics, behavioral, and social domains across three tiers of increasing intensity. Then do some overviews of creating positive, productive, safe learning environments, including a brief introduction, and I'll just connect you to resources there on 7 specific low intensity strategies and a few bonus ones. And then after we've done all of our work to prevent challenging behavior, sometimes it's still going to happen, right? Of course. So here's a 6-step instructional approach for responding to challenging behavior. And then some additional resources I'll connect to as well. If you'd like to follow along, there's slide notes or the whole PowerPoint you can download from ci3t.org on the presentation tab. So I'm going to put that link into the chat in case anybody would like to have that PDF to annotate or the slideshow to just type notes in. So the link is in there. It'll be the top presentation once you scroll down past the picture if you'd like those notes. And the resources that I'm going to share and even use some of the slides and infographics and things from come from what we're calling Enhancing CI3T modules. And that's on our Project Enhance page of the website. I'll put that link in the chat as well. And if you go there, it's first going to ask you to register your email. All the demographic information is optional, but registering your email, because this was a federally funded project that we're currently in our 5th year of and wrapping it up this year. So 5 years of my life has been devoted to developing these modules. And they're on a wide variety of topics, as you'll see as I present some today in the hour that I have with you. And originally we started with the goal of 8. We were going to make 8 modules. We spent a whole year working with our district partners across 5 different states to find out what professional learning do you need, what modality do you prefer it in, how do you want to access it, all these things. And we got all the topics and we broke it down, and it was 8 big buckets, right? So we're going to have these 8 modules. And we made the first one and we did it with our partners and we got feedback and they loved it. And it was so wonderful to get all the praise for all the great material. And they said, but it's too much, it's too big. We need bite-sized small chunks, as you might relate to. So we then split that module and the other one we were almost done building into smaller bite-sized pieces. And since then, we've been making smaller modules, which are still substantial in their size, but much smaller than they used to be. So now we're up to, I want to say 37 or something. We were originally going to build 8, but now there's 37. So I'm just that to say that there's a lot of great resources in these modules. They read as ebooks with a table of contents on the left, and I'll show you some. But there's also an interactive component. It's like a tricked out PowerPoint where you can push play and the narrator will read to you information while you're looking at animations on the slide and not just reading the slide. And there's links to infographics and other videos and animated videos and interviews with principals and a whole bunch of interactions where you can actually, drag and drop to check understandings, some multiple choice quizzes. So we're pretty proud of this information that is now out there and publicly available. It was hidden up until just June, so just recently, because we were doing randomized controlled trials with it. And so you had to be part of our research to access it. But now it is publicly available. So that website, and I see a few people just joining us. So I'm going to paste it again in the chat. And if you go there, you'll see this Chrome shiny first time module users view the informational letter and register here. That's where you can just put in your email. It'll prompt you and ask you if you'd like to talk to us for more. You can say no, and then it'll a whole bunch of demographics and things, and you can skip all that. All it really needs is your email. The rest we would love to have as researchers. The info letter will explain that these resources we need to be able to report to our funder just how often they're being accessed. So that link is there, and I'll share it again in a little bit too as we get more people joining us. So you heard me mention the three-tiered model that I research. The MTSS version that I do is called Comprehensive Integrated Three-Tiered Model of Prevention, which you've seen the triangle, you're familiar with the basic concepts of it. You can see down at the bottom, we've got the academic, behavioral, and social domains. It all matches Kentucky MTSS. We just have a unique systematic training model, a year-long training series to get people to build their MTSS frame. And it used to be, we could say that CI3T was unique because it had that social domain down there in the lower right-hand corner. Whereas before it was RTI for academics, PBIS for behavior, and they were two separate triangles, two separate teams at the school. And there's a gap in between, and it wasn't very efficient and effective as it could have been because of that separation. Even when working to support the same students, we needed to integrate. And so more and more now we have integrated MTSS, and Kentucky MTSS is one of those models that is integrated and has all those domains. And so we have integrated lesson planning and integrated interventions, and we integrate behavioral and social concepts and things into all of our day long, not only academic lessons, but even in non-academic settings. So we, of course, have those main 3 domains, academics, behavior, social, and throughout the whole day, academically, non-academically, we're talking about them. So even if I'm designing my lesson plan in English, I'm going to pre-correct and remind students what behavioral expectations they're going to need to use to be successful during this lesson. And I'm going to use the language from my social curriculum, my social skills curriculum, throughout the academic lesson to talk about turn taking or perspective taking or sharing or whatever it is that they're doing in my academic lesson. So always behavior and social skills are part of my academic instruction. So integrated lesson planning. And that's because we don't know which one comes first. When we notice a student has academic challenges or they have behavioral challenges, it's almost always both. We may only notice one first or one is more dominant, and that's what's taking our attention and our time. But if we look closer, we look at the data, we investigate further, there's challenges in both areas almost every time. And we don't know which one comes first. There's been tons of research showing at first grade, when we noticed students had reading challenges, by third grade, they also had behavior challenges. Or at first grade, those students who had behavior challenges, by the time they got to third grade, they had academic challenges, especially in reading. So it's this kind of balance, this give or take. It's almost always both. We don't know which one comes first. So whenever we notice a student who has challenges, we're going to work with them on both, regardless of whether one is causing the other. And that, tends to make sense. If we notice behavior challenges and academic challenges, could it be that I'm not able to regulate my emotions, or I'm so anxious that it's affecting my academics. I'm not able to learn. I'm not able to receive because my emotional affect is so high that it's blocking the reception of the academic instruction. Or conversely, I may have a lack of the academic skills or knowledge, and therefore I'm embarrassed or feel bad about that, or I'm so frustrated with it, or maybe it's too boring, it's too easy, and then I'm going to have these behavior challenges because I'm trying to avoid that uncomfortableness, that anxiety, that frustration, that embarrassment. I got to save face in front of my peers, so I act out. So whether or not one is causing the other, we're not always sure. We can't always tell. So we're going to address them both in an integrated fashion, such as using integrated lesson planning. So you heard me mention that, and there's modules for this on the webpage that I shared in the chat for Project Enhance that walks you through this lesson plan template, or you can adapt your own current lesson plan templates that you use with your school or district, of course, to just be thinking about what behavioral expectations do I need to include and pre-teach or use pre-correction for and remind students that they're going to need before we start the lesson so that we're more set up for success. I don't wait and react to those behavior challenges. I'm going to pre-correct and remind students of them so that they don't happen. Same with social skills. What social skills are you going to need to be successful? What getting along with others skills? Whereas behavior is kind of individualized, social skills are behaviors, but things that I need to do with either adults or other peers. So I might remind students not only the behavioral expectation of using our individual whiteboards for our math lesson, how to use them appropriately, and what are examples and non-examples. I asked some students, and yes, that's right. They're not frisbees, and yes, that's right. We don't hit people over the heads. Yes, that's right. We only write our math on them, and we use our erasers instead of our hands or Kleenex because they're so expensive. You all have little erasers or scratch pieces of what cloth, whatever it might be. So we remind them of those behavioral expectations, but also for this math lesson, we're going to need some social skills because you are going to turn and talk with your neighbor. You're going to discuss and work together to problem solve a few things, and you're going to engage in that productive struggle that we need for solving some math problems. So I'm going to remind, using the language of the social skills curriculum that's school-wide, what do these students need to know today for this lesson? So I'm thinking of all three areas, academics, social, and behavioral. I'm thinking of low intensity strategies as well. Where can I use high rates of opportunities to respond, to get all students responding, such as with those individualized whiteboards. 100% of students are engaged in using those individual whiteboards versus me just calling on a single student or asking for volunteers or even using popsicle sticks or equity sticks. That's one student at a time. All the other students are tuned out because it's not them, right? Same with like popcorn reading and things. We don't do that because the students are counting and when's it my turn and that's the only thing I need to focus on doing. I'm not paying attention to the rest. Or if I am calling on individual students, which is fine and we do, we just want to enlarge that for higher rates of opportunities to respond. I'm not using the student's name until after I've asked the question. So I might say something like, and this question is for an individual student. What is 9 times 12? Every student's writing it on their whiteboard, working to solve it. I may call on one student, and then so I might say, Douglas, what'd you get? But every student's worked on it. Whereas if I say, Douglas, this problem is for you, every other student's turned out. So anyway, that's one of the low intensity strategies, opportunities to respond. Other ones include pre-correction. So I'm reminding students beforehand. Instructional choice. Maybe it's, do you want to do this or this activity? You pick, or it might be, we're going to do both. Which one do you want to do first? Or it might be, this is the one thing we're all going to do. Everybody can choose how you want to do it. And you can set parameters on that, like where or with whom or with what materials. Things like, but just by offering any of those types of choices, we know, we don't know why, but we know through the research that it reduces challenging behavior and increases academic engagement. The other low intensity strategies you can see on your screen are behavior specific praise and high probability request sequence. So like behavioral momentum strategies, doing things we know they're going to do leading up to something they're less likely to do, but because they've got that sequence of doing those high probability ones, they're going to continue and do the one that's less likely, like a math problem. And then we always want to be doing active supervision, not teaching behind a desk. We want to be actively scanning and looking at our work. So all those things. And we're going to mark on our lesson plan here, integrated, where can I optimally use those low intensity strategies. Additionally, there's a chance for feedback, so we can always reflect on our lessons, just like we would for any and all lesson planning. So that lesson plan is in one of our modules for integrating the domains, CI3T domains into daily instruction. That's one of our modules here. And again, that website is ci3t.org, and you can type in /enhance, or you can click on enhancing CI3T modules. And once you're there, of course, just as a reminder, especially for those joining us after the start, the that little shiny first button will give you the chance to get your email in there in advance. And I'm saying it now because later when I look at these materials more, you need to wait a few minutes because it's got to load that email into the behind the scenes database before you then go back into a module, or it might lock you out. And if you do get locked out, no worries, I can help you as soon as we get to a good breaking point here. Okay. So let's see. That said, I was going to just quickly model. Here's my ci3t.org homepage. If I go to the Enhancing CI3T Modules tab, this right here is where I can click to register my email. And once I do and wait a few minutes, and then it'll tell you wait a few minutes, then I can click on any of these modules. The material I'm going to pull from today come from this series here, the Positive, Productive, Safe Learning Environments. It's a series of 4 modules. I'm going to look at this one in the middle, 7.1, the structure. And then after that, right below, a 6-step instructional approach for responding to challenging behavior. That's the second module that I'll pull some material from. And just to illustrate, if I click, it asks for my email. And since I've previously registered it, I can go ahead and type it in. And it'll confirm that it finds my email in the database, allows me to continue to the module, and here we go. So this is my ebook, table of contents on the left, read all the material. The overview tab in every module is great. It's got a table with thumbnail pictures of all the resources. So if you've finished going through the module and you're like, oh, I really like that infographic, where was it? I don't remember which page it was on, but I remember what it looked like. So I can come here, follow the link just to the infographic, and maybe put that in an email, share it with my faculty and staff, or print it out and post it in the teacher lounge or something like that. The other thing that these modules almost all have, there's only 1 or 2 that don't, is that something we're calling an interactive resource. That's that PowerPoint version where I could click play and it would somebody would narrate and walk me through it, and I can jump around to the different slides, and there's different interactions. Like this one I like, it's got some simulated conversations. So if I jump to those just to illustrate, I'm going to mute the sound here, but I can make different choices as I go through this scenario, responding to the student who's off task and not joining the group. What might I do? So I can see certain directions and branches and path, like choose your own adventure, take me to a place where my student's not successful. And if I use the choices, if I make the choices using the material learned from the module, then my student is going to be successful. So that's what the modules look like. And just jumping on in then, sharing some information about creating positive, productive, safe learning environments. And the module is going to have more material than I'm going to present today in the short time that we have together. Like here's a simulated conversation that I built for this module where people ask me like, well, how specifically in my classroom do I do positive behavior supports? I know my school does the systems level PBIS or school-wide PBIS, positive behavior interventions and supports. But what specifically do I do in my classroom? So here's some options. So I could click on these scenarios, and this new teacher would say something and I would make a choice for how do I respond. And I'll show you a few of those things when we get to the infographic. But there's more in the modules than what I'm presenting today. But to start with the basics, when we build our positive, productive, safe learning environments, it's got to be situated within the structure of systems level approach. I could do in my classroom the best job that I can do with positive behavior supports for my students, and I'll be moderately successful. I'll be able to do some things with my students and have a pretty good classroom. But it would be even better and a lot less effort on my part if the whole school was doing it. So that's why we have Kentucky MTSS. And within that, the domain for behavior is the Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support, PBIS. And one of the most recognizable parts of PBIS is the school-wide behavior expectation matrix, like you see here for this elementary school, Lincoln Elementary, part of the Presidential School District. This is made up for us. I know in Louisville, there is a Lincoln Elementary. So that was fun when I moved here years ago and found them, right? My research team has been using this Lincoln Elementary fictitiously in a lot of our materials, all of which are built from real schools. We just, changed the name to Lincoln Elementary. So we have Lincoln Lion Pride as our mascot and logo. So you can see we got our school-wide expectations of be respectful, be responsible, give best effort, but then we define what do those broad expectations look like specifically in each setting. So across the classroom as an educational environment, as well as non-academic settings like the hallway, the cafeteria, out on the playground, or the quad if it's a middle school or high school. Even in the bathroom, because people often laugh, say, "Oh, I don't want to teach bathroom expectations." I say, "Okay, well, where do your office discipline referrals come from? Do you have any in the bathroom?" "Oh, yeah, all the time," especially middle school and high school. Bad things happen in the bathroom. So that just brings my point back to say, so we need to teach explicitly bathroom expectations. So we post posters in all of these settings to make sure we're making it visible for students to learn them. We have lesson plans to teach them explicitly, including examples and non-examples. We give students the opportunity to practice engaging and meeting these expectations, and then we reinforce them. We reinforce their behavior. So when they meet these expectations, when we see it, we give them tickets, positive behavior specific praise, whatever is reinforcing for those students. And we usually have a universal ticket system or a universal reinforcement system, which usually is the form of PBIS tickets. It may be called something like Pride Bucks or usually golden tickets or something like that. But we have that currency as a way of having a tangible that can be exchanged later for something more desirable, but to recognize that good job, you met this expectation. And we're going to use specific praise like based on what's in the matrix. So good job following directions, or I like the way you use your inside voice with your neighbor during discussion time. So I'm looking at what's on my school-wide expectation matrix, and not just me, the teacher, but custodians, office staff, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, everybody should have tickets, our universal reinforcement system, to be able to recognize students when they see them meeting expectations. The more we do that, we strengthen those behaviors and expectations. They're more likely to occur in the future. And by doing so, I can ignore the minor misbehaviors. So when the group of students over in the back or on the side or wherever is a little chatty or a little off task, I do not need to yell at them. I do not need to march over and shake my finger at them. Instead, I can praise all the students around them in the other groups who are on task. I like the way this student is over here. Thank you for being on task, paying attention, making good eye contact, whatever it is you're expecting right then. The students that are doing it, you praise them. The off-task students hear that and they're reminded of it. And you didn't even have to remind them directly. You didn't have to redirect them even, which are some strategies that we'll look at too today. But just by praising all the other students, they're going to get back on task. They're going to be reminded of that. You can even pair that with active supervision and proximity teaching to where you never have to say anything to the students off task. They just figure it out because of what you're saying to other students and where your location is in the classroom. That's what creates a positive, productive, safe learning environment because you're not yelling. Your stress level's not rising. When I was a teacher, my students would make fun of me because I would start to flush. I would get the red in my neck up to my cheeks because I would get angry. I would keep my voice calm, but they could still know when I was angry because of that physical reaction. And if I had known these things, if I had known how to respond respectfully to when challenging behavior did happen, but also if I had any inkling of preventing challenging behavior, I could have avoided that and I could have focused on the students who were on task, the students who were meeting expectations. That would have made me happier and lowered my stress level to where I wouldn't have had that anger flush response. So this is the school-wide expectation matrix. Large, they should be very large in every classroom, so visible from every place in the classroom, as well as maybe in the hallway and a few other key settings. But additionally, we want to have specific posters just for each setting. So here's an example of the classroom expectations. So this could be 11 by 17 paper, even larger maybe, but focus just on that setting. So I'd have this for hallway, I'd have this for cafeteria, I'd have this on the back of stall doors in the restrooms for restroom expectations. So they're always available for students to see what is expected. And these are always phrased in the positive, right? What to do, never what not to do, what to do. When I'm teaching my lesson plans, though, when I'm teaching these classroom expectations or restroom expectations, I have developed very systematic lesson plans. During those, I am going to go through the non-examples and what not to do, but I don't want to focus on that. I always want to keep the what to do, the positive things, in front of students. But I am going to develop, and we're going to have these school-wide lesson plans for all teachers to use to teach across all settings. What are the behavioral expectations? Maybe we do this in the first week of school or the second week of school, one a day, maybe one setting per day. And then I'm going to revisit them at key points throughout the year. Maybe it's once a quarter. Maybe it's before and after fall break, winter break, spring break. Maybe it's at the semester at the minimum, but I'm going to revisit these multiple times. And especially if I'm noticing there's upsurges in behavior in the hallway, all teachers are going to reteach hallway expectations. And we're going to do some extra monitoring in the hallway to prevent some of that hallway behavior when we see that uptick in behavior. But I've got these lesson plans. They're developed for my whole school. We're going to teach them and going to give students opportunities to meet expectations, practice doing that. So if I'm the classroom teacher and I'm teaching hallway expectations, even in middle school and high school, I'm going to go into the hallway with my students and practice walking safely on the right side with voice level 0, whatever the expectation is. And then I'm going to use my words, behavior specific praise, to reinforce those behaviors for those students meeting those expectations, both during that practice time, but also all the time. And all adults have the power to do that because all adults have tickets. Some schools, by the way, are using electronic ticket systems, and that's fine if every adult in the building has the ability to give every student, any student in the building, that ticket electronically. So for most schools, I haven't seen that yet. Even when everybody's got a smartphone, not every student's got a ID with a QR code or a barcode to scan to give them a ticket. The younger students or something. So I've seen some high schools are doing it pretty well with all the smartphones. Takes a little longer to do electronically, but it may be worth it for some schools. So it's something that's being explored and getting better. But for most, those paper tickets are still the way to go to give every opportunity, every adult the opportunity to reinforce students. Once I'm doing that in the classroom, I might have my classroom store, always pairing my tickets with behavior specific praise. My students are spending them in the classroom. Maybe I even have a whole class, really big ticket option. Maybe I use a whole sheet of paper and they need to earn 10 class-wide tickets. So when I notice, oh, the whole class is on task. They're all using the 0 voice level right now. We're all focused, whole class ticket, golden ticket, special ticket, above and beyond the small individual tickets. And then that's going to earn a class reward or something. Or I am using individual tickets for my students to reinforce their behaviors. It goes into a classroom bucket. So they spend classroom things. It doesn't have to be tangible, expensive things that I buy. It could be coupons for things like time, a little extra recess time, time to read to the service dog or something. Here's an example of a school that I worked with years ago. Like only the treasure chest is something she ever bought things for from the dollar store, right? And it didn't cost anything for any of these other items, and students were saving their tickets to buy the opportunities to do these things. They were spending them in the classroom in that classroom store. There's also the school store. So if the classroom didn't have things that were incentivizing for students, they could save it and spend it at the school store. Once those tickets are spent in the classroom, they could go to fill up a classroom bucket. And then that once it reaches a certain level, they earn a class reward like extra recess time or skip a homework assignment or bonus extra credit points on the next quiz or something that would be beneficial for all students. Then that bucket from the classroom rewards that's been met gets carried up to the office. And there's something like you see on the screen here, a tower that every teacher can dump their tickets into once they've been spent in the classroom, and we get a whole school reward. You can see the lines there where they earn things like crazy hair day, pajama day, bring your stuffy to school day, or your favorite blankie to, whatever it might be that the students usually vote on for what would be the school-wide reinforcer. So students are getting the opportunity to spend their tickets not just once in the classroom, but it then goes toward the class reward and the school reward. So tickets get used multiple times. Some students will never spend their tickets. The value is in the praise, the power is in the praise. That's what's reinforcing the little bit of attention that they get, plus maybe the tangible for many students. But some students save their tickets and it's just they like to collect them and show how many they have. Or I know students who have stuck them around the mirror in their bathroom or their bedroom at home around their desk where they study. And it's just reinforcing to know that they got recognized for doing the right thing, meeting the school-wide expectations, so they save their tickets. Now for some extra specifics, here's an infographic from the module on creating positive, productive, safe learning environments. And so some specific things teachers can do to make sure that their classroom stays positive. Like I mentioned earlier, praise students around the students who are off task. That keeps things going. We're using behavior-specific praise all the time to reinforce expected behaviors, what I want to see happen more of, so that I can ignore the minor misbehaviors. I'm going to remind students of expectations, so pre-correcting. So, hey, remember as we come into the class after recess, go ahead and get your books, put your jackets on the hooks, whatever it is. You're reminding students of what to do so that you don't have to yell at them later for not doing it, right? We're putting it in front of them as a pre-correction so they remember, oh yeah, and they just go do it so they don't get in trouble later for not doing it. And then you're happier, they're happier. The classroom's a warmer, safer, more positive environment. I'm going down on the left here for the rows. I'm always going to phrase everything in the positive. I'm going to point out what students should do instead of telling them what not to do. Now, during certain lesson plans, I might have examples and those non-examples for what not to do, but every day to day, I'm going to be focusing on the positive, what to do, always putting in front of them what to do positively. In the right-hand column there, I'm going to be using simple, precise redirect. So when I do need to, I can use a precision command or precision request sequence. So telling them if they are off task and maybe praising everybody around them didn't work, I can say, remember the expectation is right now we're working on math problem number 7. And I give them time and space. I walk away, give them a chance to meet that expectation. I'm not going to hover over them and yell at them and, create that antagonistic environment where they're going to need to save face or puff up and battle me or escalate the situation. No, 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 I don't want to do that. I'm going to give them time and space. I've given them the redirect when necessary, and I walked away giving them time and space to meet expectations. I'm going to recognize when they do meet them, either publicly if they like that, I know my students well enough to determine that, or privately, and maybe slip them a praise note or come back and whisper to them, thank you guys for getting back on task when I asked you to, so that they get a little bit of extra tension in that positive way, because the power's in the praise, the positive behavior specific praise. I'm going to use that neutral tone when I do that redirecting. I'm not going to yell across the room. I'm not going to show anger. Like the more angry I'm feeling or frustrated, or they push my buttons and I'm just annoyed, the calmer my voice gets, the quieter my voice gets. That helps my classroom stay positive. And of course, I'm going to reinforce behaviors that meet expectations before doing any of that redirecting. I tried praising everybody as I walked to the table. They didn't get the hint. I waited a sufficient amount of time praising everybody with proximity teaching. Didn't work. So then I'm going to use my neutral tone and then finally redirect them. Some other things that are really simple to keep us that safe, welcoming, warm environment. I can just shift the language just a little bit. And I'm going to ask you to put something in the chat in just a moment. So get ready in the chat for something that you do that keeps your classroom positive. But one thing that I learned to do was to tell students, remember to, like they're leaving the classroom, I'm reminding them about homework or permission slips or something. I'm going to tell them, remember to do things rather than saying, don't forget to. It's exactly the same thing, right? But I'm using just a slight shift in language that keeps my classroom positive. So remember to instead of don't forget to. What to do instead of what not to do. And the last one there, if I have students who ask me to do something other than what they're supposed to be doing, which happened all the time for me, I'd always have students say, oh, Mr. Royer, can I get on the computer? And my instinct, actually, what I did for a while before I learned better, was to get upset and say, heck no, no way. We just talked about your assignments that you're behind on and the scores that you have zeros on and you're missing this and that and the other. Of course you can't go do, you need to finish what we just talked about. Well, I could do that. That's the right don't do. But it would be better, and I found much more success with my students if I would say, sure thing as soon as you finish what we just talked about, or sure thing as soon as you've done this assignment or whatever the task is that they need to do before that. Now, they may not have time to finish that and go do what they ask you to do, but you've given them the possibility, or you've shown them the criterion to get there, and you've made it as positive as you can. And they can figure out that it's not realistic or that there may not be enough time to. But most of my students felt good about that. They're like, okay, there's hope. If I get through this, I can do what it is that's more desirable for me right now. So that's an infographic that you can get in the module. You can share this with your colleagues or print it out and put it around, but there's just some little tips here to keep that positive, productive, safe learning environment. So if you would, in the chat now, take just a moment and drop a sentence for me. It doesn't have to be a complete sentence, but tell me something that you have done along the lines of what I'm presenting in that framework of keeping a positive, productive, safe learning environment. What's one thing that you do, or have seen somebody else do even, that helps keep your classroom or you've seen somebody else's classroom stay positive? Drop something in the chat for a minute here. Thanks, Laura, for being brave and going first. Yeah, fill your buckets. There's lots of ways to do that with build a star or something. April, you want to just tell us on the mic? You can do that too. I didn't say that. You can put it in the chat or jump on the mic. When I see a student who's off testing, I may say, I love how, yes, exactly. You're showing how what the desired behavior is getting your attention. So we're teaching students, this is how you get my attention by doing the positive things that we're looking for. Greeting students positive. Yes, positive greetings at the door. Huge effect size for increasing on-task behavior and reducing challenging behavior. Just by greeting them non-contingently at the door as they come in positively. Excellent. Thanks for that reminder, Kim. That's a great strategy. And yeah, praising them for staying on task, doing your work. Exactly. Finding the students who are meeting your expectations. Constantly reminding student what a great job doing. Yeah, praise them for doing a great job. Good. If you think of more, please put them in the chat. Thanks for being interactive with me today. So the last thing I want to share with you about keeping your classrooms positive, productive, and safe are these things called low intensity strategies. And by low intensity strategies, we mean things that don't take a lot of time, don't take a lot of planning, don't take a lot of work, maybe a little bit of preparation initially, or depending on what it is, like if I'm going to do high rates of opportunities to respond to review a topic, I may need to pre-plan a list of 15, 20, maybe 30 questions. So that's going to take a little bit of time, but very low intensity, not a huge drain on resources, whether that's my time or emotions or physical things or costs, none of that. So these are low intensity teacher delivered strategies, excuse me, to help students stay on task, be productive, and to reduce and prevent challenging behavior. So you can see there's 7 on the left, and they are all found in the book, Supporting Behavior for School Success, a step-by-step guide to key strategies that you see there. So if you wanted to read more, there's 1 chapter per low intensity strategy in that book. On the right is another book, and for new teachers or for like a book study a school can do, this is one that a lot of schools have success with. There's a new edition coming soon also. They use slightly different strategies, like you heard me mention proximity teaching, overlappingness and withedness are pretty similar, pacing, not too fast, not too slow, self-monitoring and behavior contracts, those are more almost, those are tier 2 strategies, but pretty low intensity ones as well. So I lump them in here, even though they're more tier 2. Now, those 7 on the left that you see in that book, if you wanted to buy the book and read it, or you can do book studies with it as well. There's many schools and districts that do, and I even know university courses that use this book. Now, because of the federal funding that we have for Project Enhance, each of those 7 low intensity strategies are a standalone module for free. So you just register with that email, like I showed you in the beginning, and each of these modules exist. So I can go learn exactly how to implement behavior-specific praise in my classroom. What are the steps to prepare and to do that? Oh, how do I do instructional choice? Ooh, high probability request sequences. That sounds pretty exciting. What is it? How does it work? How do I do it? So it's not only going to teach you how to do it, what it is, what does the research say, why is it effective? It's going to cover what are the benefits, what are the challenges, what are the steps, how do I monitor that I'm doing it correctly? So treatment integrity. How do I assess social validity, meaning what do people think of the goals, procedures, and outcomes of this strategy? And these are things that I should be doing all day, every day at tier 1. I should be using high rates of behavior-specific praise. Maybe I start with pre-corrections as people come to the door, as we head into a task or an activity. I'm going to pre-correct for it. I'm going to use active supervision during it. I'm going to use behavior-specific praise while they're doing good work on it. I may embed some instructional choices either at the beginning or the middle. Maybe there's some high probability request sequences for a group of students that take a little longer to get started or something like that. Always using instructional feedback to make sure that I'm pointing out what they're doing right while providing support for any refinements needed, while also adding in extra nuggets of information that's bonus material. So, 7 low intensity strategies that I can embed all the time throughout my instruction at tier 1. That allows me to have positive, productive, safe learning environments. Also, bonus tip, all of these low intensity strategies can be intensified and become tier 2 strategies. So I can focus at even higher rates of behavior specific praise or opportunities to respond for this one student or this group of students. And that becomes my tier 2 intervention because they need a little bit more attention, a little bit more reinforcement, a little bit more engagement to stay on task with what we're doing in the classroom. So that's the low intensity strategies, the last thing to share with positive, productive, safe learning environments. So now shifting gears just a little bit to talk about a 6-step instructional approach to responding to challenging behavior. So we've done all of that prevention work to keep challenging behavior from happening. It works for most of our students almost all the time, but not all the time. We know there's no strategy that works for all students all the time. So we need a plan. We need a flow chart. What do we do when there is challenging behavior? How do I initially respond in order to prevent it from escalating, for example? So there's a handful of things that I'm going to talk about, including this 6-step approach. So, of course, it starts with needing to have everything in place universally across the school-wide program. So what you see at the top here is a page from a CI3T implementation manual where it shows for faculty and staff roles and responsibilities. There's similar rows for student roles and responsibilities, administrator roles and responsibilities, parents and family roles and responsibilities. Here's the one for faculty and staff because that's what we're talking about, right? How do we respond to challenging behavior following the 6-step approach? But within those role and responsibilities, you see the columns for academics, behavior, and social skills. So it's very clear and very transparent. What does every adult need to do in the building to implement our school-wide plan? And that includes things like for academics, making sure that I'm delivering an integrated lesson plan, that I'm adhering to the plan, the treatment integrity checklist for my curriculum, the chosen school district curriculum for reading, for math, for social studies, everything, right? That's been vetted, it's research based, it's shown to have the desired outcomes when we implement it as designed. And how do I keep data to track that I'm following the plan and not just trying to teach reading my own way, which may or may not work, and that's a risk I can't take. I got to follow the reading curriculum. I can customize it a little bit and put my spin on it, but I'm following the curriculum. That's my academic expectation. I'm going to use those low intensity strategies. I'm going to do all the things to increase motivation in my classroom, such as making sure that I'm giving students a little bit of control with instructional choices, just the right amount of challenge, so it's not too easy, not too, all those things are happening. So these are all in place not just for academics, but also for behavior. So I'm teaching expected behaviors, I'm giving opportunities to practice, I'm reinforcing all those things that we just talked about, including the physical setup of the room to prevent challenging behaviors and managing paperwork appropriately so there's no bottlenecks that cause problem behaviors, things like that. Once all those things are in place, if I'm meeting all of my expectations, there should be very few times where challenging behavior occurs, but it will, of course. And so we need a plan. Here's an example of a flow chart, also in a module, for how to respond to challenging behavior. But you see at the top in the green, before I even get to whether this is a minor behavior or a major behavior, which is classroom managed or office managed, do I write a referral? Do I handle it myself? First, I'm going to respond following these 6 steps. And there's an infographic for these, but I first want to show empathy. And maybe before I get to the person that I need to show empathy to, the student who's challenged or struggling, first I may need to keep the flow of instruction going and acknowledging all the students who are meeting expectations, who are on task. And then I get to my student and I'm going to show empathy first, maybe provide some redirection or reteaching. And I'm going to walk away and show some time, give them some time and space and be on the lookout to recognize the appropriate behavior when it does occur. So here's an infographic covering these 6 steps, starting, and you can share this with faculty and staff, of course, but we're going to show empathy first. And for many people, that's Done. I know how to do it. It's easy to show empathy. I know what that means. For others, we need to teach it. We need to not assume every adult in the building is good at showing empathy to students, especially the super young students, or maybe it's the adolescents who we're not good at showing empathy toward. So we're going to practice, or we're going to at least review some do's and don'ts with showing empathy. So, what we mean by empathy is we want to recognize and acknowledge out loud to the student that I see that you're in distress, whether that's you're struggling to do the academic work or there's something in your affect that's letting me know you've got some emotional challenges right now, whether that's anger or anxiety, depending on what I'm observing you doing and behaving, I can tell by your body language that something's wrong. You're in distress. So I'm going to communicate that to you. So I might say something like, getting down on their level. So I'm approachable, not directly in their face, maybe off to the side, 90 degrees, maybe half a pace away, so that if they are angry, I'm out of reach. If they're going to lash out and try and hit somebody, it's not going to be me. I'm close, I'm getting at their level, but I'm a little askew and a little bit separated so they can't easily hit me. I can avoid it if that were the case. Hopefully we're not going to get there though. So get down on their level and I might say something like, hey, it looks like you're having trouble getting started right now. I'm going to get the rest of the class going and I'll be back in a minute. And I give them time and space. Sometimes that's enough, just acknowledging from their point of view, just to know that, hey, the teacher noticed that I'm having a tough time. They're like, okay, I feel a little better. Somebody's noticed. Sometimes that's all I want is just to be seen, right? And then I'm going to get back on task. Otherwise, teacher's going to come back and say, so how's it going? Looks like you're having a little tough time right now. And maybe offer choices or ask a question or ask them to share. So for me, when I was in high school, actually, I did do this. This is one thing I knew how to do in my high school teaching career. A student would come in from nutrition break and they'd be obviously angry. And to my reading class, intensive reading intervention, tier 3 support, I was like, well, shoot, I'm not going to get any work out of this student if they're coming in angry like this. So instead of yelling at them and saying, get to work, I don't care what happened out there, we're here to learn how to read. That's not going to work, right? They're going to escalate. They're going to be upset with me. And that's going to, breed contention or resentment and whatnot. So instead, I would try to intercept them, I would, of course, be greeting them at the door and might notice outside first. But if for some reason I was setting up in the room and they came in and I noticed, I would say, hey, come here for a second. I want to show you something. That's a distraction. Sometimes that's all it takes too, is they're like, oh, what, you want to show me something? And there's a little bit of, there's a little release valve, right? But I pull them aside and I say, hey, look, are you okay? It looks like something happened at nutrition break. Do you want to talk about it? Do you want to go get a drink of water? Maybe they're not forthcoming, but maybe they are, and then we're good. But do you want to talk about it right now for a minute? But I got to get back to teaching, so I only got a minute. Or do you want to go talk to your counselor? Or do you just need to step outside for a minute, take some deep breaths? We had a courtyard. It's like, do you want to run around, take one lap, and come back in? I'll write you a pass. Um, but just giving them those 5 minutes, or that's usually all it took. Usually it was less, and they would get back on task. They just needed to to know that somebody saw they were having a tough time, give them some choices, get a drink of water, come back, and that's all. They just needed a few extra minutes, kind of to, decompress a little bit. So just communicating that was often all that it took. And then I got the rest of the class period of time with them to work. So I sacrificed those 5 minutes to get the rest of the period of productive work out of them. So there's another infographic here for some things to do and don't do when we're trying to show empathy. Some people tend to be very long-winded, and we don't want to do that. They'll say lots and lots and lots and lots of words, being long-winded, and we can just be short. Hey, it looks like you're having a hard time right now. I'll be back in a second. Or, how can I help you get started? You need a pencil, and I hand them a pencil, and sometimes that's that high probability request sequence where they're just instinctually going to grab it and get started. So on the left are the things that we don't want to do. Being long-winded. On the right are some ways to maybe do it just a little bit better. The key point here also being how we first respond. This comes from Dr. Jeff Colvin and his work with Dr. Terry Scott. We can de-escalate. We can prevent de-escalation by first responding with that empathy. So however we respond, if we yell first versus we show compassion first, that's going to influence whether the student kicks it up a notch and escalates toward peak behavior or crisis mode, or brings them down, de-escalates, and gets them back to calm, where they're ready to learn and be productive in the classroom. So that's showing empathy, step one. Step two, maintain the flow of instruction. So maybe I've shown empathy and then I go back and get the class working, or I notice out of the corner of my eye, I'm already teaching, so I'm just reminding the class that keep working, or here's an independent thing you can do, turn to your neighbor and do this. And then I quickly go check in with the student, show that empathy. So sometimes step one or step two gets swapped. Same with step three. So I may do two, three, and then one, or one, two, three, come back to one. There's some options in here, but I'm maintaining the flow of instruction, whatever it takes to make sure that the class is moving independently, so I can work with the one or two students maybe who are off task. I jumped the gun there. So step three, acknowledging students, just like I said earlier, I may be going to do behavior specific praise. I like how, and you people were putting it in the chat too, that matched. So I like how this table is on task. I like how this student over here has their book out ready to go. Or thank you, Byron, for having your materials neatly organized and ready for our next activity, whatever it might be. So I'm recognizing appropriate on-task behavior, getting started, persevering, having grit, whatever it may be. The school-wide expectations are great opportunities to do that. By the way, I forgot to mention earlier, I wanted to say just having tickets. I'm the adult, I'm the teacher, I'm holding the tickets. It's not so much about the tickets and the economy, but having the tickets and the matrix posted, that's just a reminder for me to use behavior specific praise to acknowledge and recognize the good behavior that's happening so that it's more likely to happen. PBIS is so much about the adults. It's so much more about adult behavior and changing how and what we do as adults than it is about students. So we're on the lookout for positive behavior. We're ignoring minor misbehavior. We're recognizing students who are doing well. So many times I go into classrooms and observe whether they're teachers working on their credential or they're in-service teachers working on their master's degree. I go observe. I don't even hear good job or even yes, acknowledging that correct answers were given. It's rare. So that's one of the things I work with them on is just take an extra second to say, good job, even if that's general praise, or even better, can you say specific praise? Great job using the mnemonic to solve that multi-step division problem, whatever it may be. It takes a few extra words, but just becomes natural teaching. Um, Otherwise, we're just so focused. This is how I was taught. I got my gen ed credential first and then my special education credential, but I was taught if 80% is getting it right, just move on, right? And if they say the right answer, ask the next question. You don't acknowledge it. That's what I was taught. But no, we need to support our students in all domains, emotionally, socially, behaviorally. So we take a little time to recognize a good behavior with that behavior specific praise. Okay, so I've shown empathy, I've maintained the flow of instruction, I've acknowledged the students who are meeting expectations. So now with my student who's having some trouble, I can redirect them back to task. I can just give them a reminder. Remember, right now the expectation is, or I can give them an option or a choice. Do you want to keep working here, or do you want to take this and do it independently in the library? Maybe I quickly reteach the expected behavior about being on task or with our materials or something, but then I'm going to typically then move to step five pretty quick and give them time and space. I'm not going to hover and make sure they get back on task. I'm going to keep an eye out to make sure they do, but I'm not going to stare at them right then and there hovering over or anything like that. I'm going to move away, give them time, and then acknowledge it. If we had more time today, I'd show you some videos of this in action. There's some resources that you can do with them. The Kentucky Department of Ed has a whole series of videos on managing challenging behavior through the public broadcasting system, actually. Great series of videos. So then lastly, step six is as I've given them time and space to get back on task or meet whatever the expectation is, I'm keeping an eye out and then I'm going to recognize it. Maybe privately, maybe publicly if I know that's reinforcing to the student, but I'm going to praise them as soon as I notice it, immediately, hopefully, with precise behavior specific praise. So those are the six steps. Those are the things I'm going to do. The most important one being show empathy first. Okay, that was a lot in a little less than an hour. I have one last question for you, and then I'll share some resources. If you would, please, on the mic, jump on if you'd like, or in the chat box, tell me, share just a little bit back with me. What was an aha moment that you had today? Something that made you go like, oh, or good reminder, or I knew that, but good info. Or if you have an idea for how you might share some of these materials, like getting the infographic from the module and sending it out to your colleagues or something. So take 60 seconds if you would, drop that in the chat. and then I'll share some resources and turn it back over to Dion. I love aha moments. I get them from my students in my university courses at the end of every class session. I find it reinforcing to know what was surprising or new to you. So share something with me. Great. Tiffany says she's going to share with her co-teachers. Excellent. Yeah, I'll show it to them. They can do the whole module or share the infographics. People tend to like those, we're told. Yes. Good. Pam said, good reminder to step back, give them time and space, give them a chance to correct the behavior. Yep. The tickets, yeah, and for the whole school. That tower, that clear plexiglass thing, a parent volunteer built that for that school. I have not found any similar like that online. You can get like kind of frosted plastic tubs, but I've only seen custom made clear ones. I've even had a parent, oh my gosh, they made, you step into the booth and the fan starts going and you're grabbing dollar bills or whatever it is. Somebody made that at a school, and once a week you could put your ticket into a bucket to win the prize to go and step into that booth to get as many tickets as you could grab. And oh my gosh, that was the most reinforcing thing for the whole school. Yeah, good. Using more, just remembering to use positive phrases. Just switch it and say, remember to, instead of yelling and running after them, don't forget to, things like that. Don't be so wordy. Don't be so long-winded. Yeah, keep it short, keep it concise. That's another strategy for certain types of behaviors to be that broken record with just one thing. You don't want to give students a step of three things to do. Anything they want or need is contingent on them complying with that first one directive. So maybe it's like be in your seat. Like, but it's like, I need you to be in your seat. And as soon as you're in your seat, I'll help you with those other things. But I need you to be in your seat. So that one thing, short and sweet, and then you can help them with the rest. Yeah, short and sweet. Good, Tracy. Okay, so you've heard me share ci3t.org. That's my favorite website. That's where we put, so there's so much more than these modules, but that's the main thing I'm stressing today. So there's modules on building your leadership capacity because I've learned, I'm sure you've seen, special education teachers are the leaders on their campus. It's up to us to help all the gen ed teachers know how to have a positive, productive, safe learning environment. I don't know why, but they didn't get that classroom management course or forget or need just some reminder. There's some that do amazing jobs, of course, but we can be leaders and share all this information with them, little piecemeal, a little bit here, a little bit there. Can't give it all at once. That's too much. That's overwhelming. That's that fire hose coming at you instead of a drinking fountain. Build your base knowledge. These modules that are at the very bottom of the Project Enhance page just go over the basics of the principles of behavior science, understanding consequences. We hear all the time, why isn't there any punishment or consequences in PBIS or CI3T or MTSS? Well, there are consequences, but you're right, we don't do punishment procedures, but we have consequences, but that's not the same as punishment. So that module clears that up and teaches how that works. There's even modules on universal behavior screening where you can learn more about that. There's a whole series on just general tier one. I used two of those today. A whole bunch of tier two supports. Check and checkouts coming soon. That one's just about finished. It's kind of one of our last ones that we're doing. And there's a whole series on tier three supports, all these modules, tons of resources at your fingertips, including this whole series of functional assessment-based interventions. So how to do the functional behavior assessment, how to design the function-based intervention plan, so your FBA and your BIP and everything. If you're ever interested in building your CI3T model, let me know. There's a whole plan. I had a whole series going this year at the Shelbyhurst campus, so it's a little far away maybe for you, but let's talk. Maybe there's options. Some of the sessions can be done online, the shorter 2 hour ones versus the full day ones. And then travel is an option too. So anyway, perfectly right at time. Look at us. It's all 4:30 on the dot. Right there we go. There's my email if you have questions or want to follow up on anything or missed some of the resources or anything. And again, visit that ci3t.org/enhance for those modules. And there's plenty there for your learning and for sharing with your faculty and staff. So thank you again for having me today, and I'll stick around for a few minutes if there are any questions or follow-up thoughts. Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
I do want to just say that wonderful session. Thank you so much. It brought lots of resources. and just the think, just that reminder of the empathy. A couple things I wanted to say was just that pre-correction and the value of pre-correction, and reminding of those behavior expectations. We know those things, but we forget to revisit those, and I think it's wonderful. I love that you combine those three components around the academic and the behavioral and the social, and sometimes we forget all of those pieces. So again, thank you for that. So lots of great resources today. I love the flow chart. I love the behavior specific praise. So all kinds of really good things that came from our session today. So
Great. Well, I
uh,
love your behavior specific praise right now.
yeah.
Recognizing the things that were useful. Perfect.
Mhm.
So thank you. And
So
again, thank you for the opportunity. And this was always
absolutely.
fun to present and share things that we've worked so hard on over the years, building these
Mhm.
resources.
Mhm.
And I like what
Mhm.
you said too about how these are a lot of these things we already do. For many, like that Brown book, for example, I've had a lot of veteran teachers say, I know all these things, I do all these things, but not necessarily always as systematically or as purposefully, as intentionally as I can.
Mhm.
So sometimes we just need reminders for what we're
Mhm.
doing, or we give a name to what we do, and then we're
To
like, oh, and then you can learn more about it, or see other
mhm.
people do it, or read about it, or something.
Yeah, and the low intensity strategies and the conversation that you had about those are perfect for tier one, but then they can be ramped up for tier two. And
Right.
again, that's naming that strategy. And we do those things in the classroom, but to name the strategy and to identify that either as intervention to support behavior, or as a student has been identified and we're using that for specially designed instruction in the area of special education. So
Yeah,
I love the
exactly.
low intensity strategies, and like I said, I love the flow chart and the resources that you had. So we're excited to have those and to share
Good.
them with our teachers and our
Yeah,
special
everything
education
on
professionals.
ci3t.org is free access, free for everybody. So feel free to share it. We appreciate when we're cited or given credit for where it came from. We're not always the
Okay.
best at branding or putting our name or website on it as a research group, but most of the
Mhm.
we're getting better. So yeah,
Yeah.
feel free to share broadly.
Okay. Thank you. And we certainly will credit. Good work. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks.
All
Wonderful.
right. Thank you for being with us. And we look forward to having you visit our behavior cadre in the future. So thank you.
That would be great. Yes, thanks for thinking of me. Take care, everybody.